got some good games this week. And, we don't have – it's not a loaded schedule by any means. But college football, especially this day and age with the transfer portal and conference realignment, you're going to get good games every single week, and that's something that really excites me. Big college football guy myself, and the biggest game this week is Tennessee and Georgia. And a little spoiler alert, we will pick this game at the end of today's show, but do want to spend a couple of minutes previewing it here right now. It was a game that opened at 7.5 in favor of Georgia, and I saw that, and I was like, what in the world? That seems a little aggressive. And now it's kind of come back down to life a little bit. It is now -3.5 in favor of Georgia. I think this is probably needs to be right around there, -3, -3.5 as far as the spread in this football game. And, both teams obviously undefeated. Both teams 2-0. They haven't really been challenged yet whatsoever. Now, Tennessee has clearly been the better team through 2 games. They played Syracuse, and East Tennessee State beat Syracuse 45-26, and then East Tennessee State 72-17. So Joey Aguilar, who comes over from UCLA, that kind of was an interesting thing this offseason, right? All the drama around Nico Iamaleava, true freshman starter for Tennessee last year. He had whatever. I mean, his people said he didn't like kind of the offense that Heupel was running. It was a lot of weird stuff transpiring there. And at the end of the day, basically UCLA and Tennessee flipped quarterbacks, and it looks like that is a massive win for Tennessee because Joey Aguilar has been really, really good in these 2 games. But now he faces Kirby Smart, so we'll see exactly what Aguilar is made of. In this football game, Georgia also 2-0, 45-7 win against Marshall, and then only beat Austin Peay 28-6 in that football game last week. Now, that was there's been some weather around really the entirety of the country, so there's been some stoppages. We saw it in the NFL game, the first NFL game of the season between Dallas and Philadelphia. So there was a stoppage in that game. You're playing an FCS opponent. That's kind of, weird, right? So I don't know if necessarily it was as bad as that score perhaps would indicate, but Georgia obviously has dominated Tennessee. Kirby Smart is 4-0 against Josh Heupel, and he's won those games by a total of 80 points. Georgia's outscored Tennessee by a total of 80 points in those 4 games, and Georgia also has beat Tennessee 8 times in a row. Now, that's kind of where Tennessee was at as it related to Alabama as well. And obviously, they have turned that around. Alabama absolutely owned Tennessee for the longest time. And even, with Nick Saban still there, Tennessee was able to beat Alabama. I actually was at that game. Incredible environment in Neyland Stadium. They went nuts, and that was the day, obviously, the goalposts were put in the river for Tennessee. But so it's only a matter of time before Tennessee kind of gets that monkey off their back again and beats Georgia, right? The thing with Alabama, when you have those streaks, like, they end at some point, right? Like the Penn State, Ohio State, at some point Penn State's going to be able to get it done. It's not going to be this year, I can tell you that. But at some point, you would think Penn State's going to be able to get over the hump and beat Ohio State. Same kind of thing here with Tennessee and Georgia. But let's talk about Gunnar Stockton a little bit here. Carson Beck obviously leaves for the Georgia Bulldogs. He transfers to Miami, and, he was a highly touted guy. He sat for a couple of years behind Stetson Bennett. He was there for a long time. I think in a lot of ways he got a little bit too much criticism for how things transpired for Georgia over the past couple of years. Georgia led the country in drops, right, last year, so his receivers certainly weren't helping him out. Say what you want about Carson Beck. I'm certainly not a Carson Beck fan, but I think as far as the stuff on the football field, what transpired, some of the criticism was a little extreme as it related to Carson Beck, but he obviously got hurt in the SEC title game against Texas last year, had the elbow injury, and then the kid, Gunnar Stockton, has to come in, and he had a really gutsy performance in that game. He definitely felt like a run-first guy in that game, but really showed off his physicality, had the one awful interception, which kind of made you scratch your head a little bit there. And then he played in the game against Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame won that game, kind of a low-scoring defensive game. Stockton didn't necessarily play great in that game. One thing, my biggest takeaway I remember from that game, no touch on his throws. Like, everything was just a missile all over the football field. Obviously, you can't play quarterback like that. But Kirby obviously loves his leadership, loves his toughness, and it seems like his teammates have a belief in him. But he was throwing it 30-plus times against an FCS opponent last week against Austin Peay. That makes me scratch my head a little bit. He threw it 34 times in that game. That's not Kirby Smart. I've got issues with that. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the game, Georgia and Austin Peay, but him throwing it 34 times, that isn't a good idea, and I don't know why exactly that transpired on the football field for Georgia. So I'm really interested to see how he plays in this game. He has that big game experience, as we just alluded to, played in the SEC title game against Texas, played against Notre Dame, but obviously this is his first big test as the guy at Georgia, right? First two games, Marshall, Austin Peay don't really count, right? He's got to go on the road to Neyland Stadium, and as I said, I've been to Neyland Stadium. There aren't many environments in college football that are better and that are louder than Neyland Stadium, so that certainly is going to be a big issue for Georgia in this game. Now, I would give the Dogs the lean as far as the quarterback that is best equipped to handle this. Now, that might seem crazy saying he's on the road. What are you talking about? But Joey Aguilar also hasn't been in a spot where he's had to play in this big of a game. This is the most pressure that Aguilar will face. It's going to be sold out. Place is going to be rocking. The adrenaline's going to be through the roof for Aguilar, and all he's heard is people say how fantastic he is the past 2 weeks and how great Tennessee is as an offense. Whereas Georgia, on the other side of that, where people are saying, what's Georgia doing there? Barely beating Austin Peay, whatever the case may be. Kirby, I'm telling you, has coached those guys hard throughout the week, and they're going to show up and be ready to play. Also, an interesting storyline, the offensive line is healthier for Georgia. That perhaps, they were without one of their tackles in the Austin Peay game, and I believe one of their guards as well. Both of those guys are expected to play here in Tennessee, which could perhaps put them in a better spot. But it really feels like, a low-scoring game, right? Tennessee has never scored more than 17 points in the 4 games where Kirby and Heupel have played each other. So, Tennessee is known for scoring a bunch of points, having this prolific offense. Georgia clearly has had the solution for that. I think a lot of people think Tennessee is just kind of this air raid offense where they spread it out and chuck it around. That's not what Heupel likes to do whatsoever. They're very much a team that wants to establish the run, and then they're going to take some shots over the top as well. But the reason why they haven't had success against Georgia, one, you could argue Georgia has the better players, right? They have the better recruits, and they're better coached, in my opinion. So, that's obviously one thing. But, Tennessee's had issues running the football on Georgia, and then they've been in spots where Georgia's like, well, we're just going to keep it in front of us. And then Tennessee can't push the ball down the field. They can't make those explosive plays. And by that point, Georgia has already had a big lead in the ball game. And it's kind of felt like Tennessee was just kind of, besides last year where they jumped out to that lead, but in the years prior to that where it felt like they kind of were behind before it even really got going, and they were just really in a very difficult spot as it relates to their performance against Georgia. But that's going to be an incredible football game. Again, the line was 7.5. That's what it opened at, all the way down to 3.5 here at this point. We will pick that game later on the show here today. But Kirby, he's going to have those guys locked in. They had a really intense week of practice. I definitely feel like he's going to have those guys playing with a chip on his shoulder, and we'll see if Josh Heupel and Tennessee are up for that test, and we're going to find out how exactly real Tennessee is, right? Or if this is just another team that can blow out the weak teams, but once they get into SEC play, kind of, they win a lot of games, but, they can't always beat the top dogs, right? We kind of saw that last year with Tennessee. They get into the playoff after the expansion, but no prayer against Ohio State. Georgia's certainly not nearly at the level that Ohio State team was last year, as far as talent and just ability as an offense. But it's going to be really interesting because, Tennessee trying to get that monkey off their back. And it's not like this thing is in Athens in between the hedges. It's at Neyland Stadium, and that place is going to be absolutely rocking. Certainly looking forward to that matchup.